Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live broadcast, The Evolution of Addiction Medicine, Survive or Thrive. I am Judy O'Rourke of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We are delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots and brought to you by Carolina Liquid Chemistries. Carolina Liquid Chemistries is an ISO certified and FDA registered manufacturer, repackager, and relabeler of chemistry instruments and reagents. Carolina's test menu consists of over 100 reagents, ranging from urine drug screens to general health assessment. For more information, please visit carolinachemistries.com. We have a few important announcements before we begin. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. You can enlarge the slide window by clicking on the screen icon in the lower right-hand corner of the slide window. If you have any technical problems viewing or hearing this presentation, please click on the support button at the top right of your presentation window or submit your problem through the green Q&A button lower left. I would now like to introduce today's speakers, Dr. Franco Sicuro and Carlos Himpler. Dr. Sicuro is a board-certified psychiatrist practicing for over 30 years. His private practice is located in Creve Coeur, Missouri. He is the founder and principal investigator of Millennium Psychiatric Associates, a clinical research company conducting clinical trials in Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, depression, and bipolar illness. He is clinical associate professor of psychiatry at KCUMB in Kansas City. Dr. Sicuro founded the Heron Fund, a charitable organization very active in supporting clean water projects and medical missions in third world countries. He has been serving as president of the organization since 2007. Carlos Himpler specializes in service operations, business strategy, and corporate development. He is an executive-level strategist with extensive experience leading new business development and service operations. He has helped organizations reorganize and simplify business processes to maximize market share and customer delivery performance, as well as executing business development strategies to penetrate and expand key markets. Mr. Himpler has orchestrated joint ventures, business startups, reorganizations, mergers, acquisitions, and integrations to achieve sustainable and profitable growth. He has had P&L responsibility over multi-million-dollar businesses and is currently a healthcare consultant for physician practices and hospitals across the country. Mr. Himpler has firsthand knowledge of what it takes to set up a clinical laboratory and has set up a number of laboratories for his clients. I will now turn it over to Dr. Sicuro for his presentation.
So, thank you. Hello, everybody. I guess I've been very well introduced. And, you know, we have a slide deck today that looks a little bit at how this addiction medicine has evolved and doesn't have the pretense to go into details and you know that this is a topic that has been extensively addressed by many point of views, and we just want to do a little bit of a general outflow of what has happened and where we're going, because obviously we need to change the future, and we have to understand the past, and we have to act in the present. And so let me go through this. I'd like to present you with some of these slides, and some of them I'm going to spend a little more time on. And for the sake of time, I'm more interested in the question and answers, and really want to give you my personal clinical experience. So, you know, over the years, addiction has been fluctuating between being mainly a social problem or mainly a crime or mainly an illness or mainly a moral problem. And so it's obviously that, you know, has implicated immensely in our society. Probably with the era of prohibitionism between the 1920 and 1933 has been a big contributor to the development of the most powerful crime organizations. So it looks like prohibitionism has not been the greatest. On the other hand, other approaches have taken a little bit more of a social as well as a religious approach. We all want to remember that the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, published in 1939, has a very strong religious background. And later, very agencies have been developed to address the issues of either alcoholism or drug addiction. And just in the late 50s, a little bit of a medical approach was introduced with antabuse. So AA membership became the main source of relief for people that were seeking recovery from addiction. And in the 50s was extremely popular. A lot of the organization were funded and definitely became the hallmark on how to approach it. In the 60s, medical approach with a concept of disease became more and more popular, and we lived in a hybrid in which counseling, moral or ethical decisions were kind of overlapping with medical decisions, and this medical model took on a little bit more with the introduction of methadone, with the introduction of payments from the insurance company, realizing that this was a complex disease and needed to be approached not simply at a counseling level, but also at a medical level. The diagnostics became more and more complicated, and the DSM, which is Statistic Manual for Diagnosis, was developed in the late 70s and in the 80s. A specialized clinic for addiction, namely Betty Ford, became kind of an hallmark of what to do to deal with it. So more and more money got plugged in by grants and by the government, as well as by insurance reimbursement in the 80s, and the famous concept of the 28 days recovery was developed. And then back in the middle of the 90s, naltrexone was introduced as a spin-off on naloxone as an anti-opioid agent that will prevent people from developing and maintaining addiction. So approaches were different, and they continue to be different. Was educational, counseling, prayer, incarceration, very, very popular as well, some form of punishment, and definitely medication was part of it. Now, we live in an area in which probably integration of these different models is really necessary, and obviously we have to be able to be flexible enough to understand that addiction is a multifaceted problem, and therefore it's got social policies involved with it, and definitely insurance policies, monetary policies, mental health issues. I do remember in the 80s, a lot of the times when a medication or mental health approach to the illness was kind of frowned upon, and most of the times at the typical Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, if somebody will show up with some form of benzodiazepines, he will be fustigated. So things have changed, and even mental illness has changed a little bit the approach. So at the end, this addiction stays really a puzzle. It is a behavioral problem. It's a social issues. We probably have a combination of all of those. But what I like to also stress out is that there is more and more science that is coming out and try to figure out what is behind addiction, why people get stuck with something that they cannot get rid of and becomes a driver for their life. So part of that is the fact that there are aspects of our brain that we totally are not knowledgeable of. It is said that it's possible that probably only 10% of the brain chemistry is understood at the present time, and there is more and more specific diagnostic and electrophysiological testing that continue to be developed in order to address this. And so in this integrated behavioral model, I want to share with you a little bit of our experience, and I'm going to skip through some of these slides because I found them, probably self-explanatory. But one thing that has happened with us is this: in the last 2 years or 3 years, mortality rate for cardiovascular disease as well as for cancer has actually declined. What has increased is the suicide rate. And what has increased, unfortunately, concomitantly, is the fact that the prescription of narcotic medications from physicians has also become, and therefore abuse by people of medications or narcotics has escalated. And so the suicide rate and the abuse and the passing of the so-called medical opioids as a main source of problem for addiction is become really in the last couple of years a main problem. In fact, the National Institute of Addiction is really taking a little more attention to that. So at this point, we know that we have a need. We know we have some statistics. We know how dangerous this is. And quite frankly, I got to tell you that we just lost one of our patients yesterday morning, most likely from overdose of prescription medication. So this hits really home fairly often, and in psychiatric practice probably more often than it should because of the fragility of our population. So we really need to take a hard look at what kind of professional intervention we can put in place in order to identify patients that could be addicted or could use addictive medications, even though we may feel that they may need it, but not necessarily to that degree. And I always like to use this little example. We all love automobiles. They bring us around. We have the capability of having fun with them. We can have different models, so we can change them. But in reality is, whenever we are driving this beautiful machinery that has changed our life in the last century so much, we're also driving a weapon. And similarly, mortality for, car accidents and, the cost, the societal cost of this weapon is significant. So somehow these painkillers that, a lot of practices use, or these narcotics, they do have, maybe the beauty of relieving pain and making life a lot easier. On the other hand, could be deadly weapons. So, obviously, the medical model is really complicated. Not knowing enough about the brain chemistry, we have really very few tools to address it. And I mentioned a couple of them, the anti-opioids as well as the anti-abuse. So lately, we like to look at this in terms of wellness and not simply treatment, because at the end, if we combine, the need for health and the need for well-being, we probably have a better understanding, a very better projection of what the issues are. And obviously, we have a healthcare reform trying to address this, and politicians are trying to address, permissivism or not. Recently, marijuana has been liberalized in certain states. And sometimes nobody really talks about all the ill effects of using marijuana. But, substantially, I think we are faced with with an issue, we have to identify people that may actually be abusing in front of our eyes. We have to identify a system by which we can engage them into a program that allows them to wean themselves out of this and also sustain that improvement. So in this prevention and wellness activity that we want to promote at a medical level, we can include many things. In our intensive outpatient program, which we have started a few months ago, we like to look at the disease management, but also the ability of preventing harm, as well as promoting self-care, as well as promoting something that personally I like the most, and which is meditation and yoga. And so in this recovery model, things are getting more and more complicated, and we have a proliferation of sites where, medical models and psychosocial models are approved, and also alternative models are approved. Unfortunately, the recovery rate is very, very low, so we have a long way to go. But at one point, we decided to engage ourselves in the ability of defining what the problem is, and obviously we don't know if this particular individual come in the office do have abuse, or they using excessively certain medication or drugs. So we decided in our office to take a step forward and say, well, from now on, if I like to continue treatment with medication that are potentially dangerous, I really want to feel that I have, a dashboard of what's going on with your life. So part of our dashboard is really to be able to look at their chemical use and eventually chemical abuse. So we decided that it was good for us to take a laboratory experience and bring it into the office and change a little bit the routine of our office. And we using the toxicology in the lab in order to create a monitoring system, but also give people the sense of collaboration and helping them through control of their problem. I was in a consultation the day before yesterday on a 74-year-old barber who was the first thing he told me, and he was in the hospital for heart problems. The first thing he told me is that he was struggling to get off the Xanax for so long, and he understands that he's now hooked on it. So this is something that hits home literally every single day. And just this morning I called on a consult of a 18 years old they're trying to overdose. People want to get rid of it. They're afraid. They take their life with it. It's just a constant reminder of how important this is. So we decided in our office to offer that, and also offer the ability of referring them into intensive outpatient program, into rehabilitation program, and creating a little more of a continuity of care and engaging also the family. So what I would like to, for the sake of time and also for the sake of your attention, to pass on the baton on is Carlos Himpler. He has been very helpful in my office in setting up the ability of laboratory monitoring of this horrible problem that is drug abuse, drug overdose, drug overuse, drug dependency, drug debts. And so with that, I'm going to just invite Carlos on and continue. Carlos, are you online?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Sicuro.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's having a good afternoon so far. You know, when Dr. Sicuro and I was asked to co-host this webinar, one of the things that we wanted to do was offer our personal experience in the process of how we went from behavioral health to the IOP and addiction treatment, and also our experience on how we started or created the clinical laboratory. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to share with you our experience on setting up a clinical laboratory. The reason why we decided as a practice to go ahead and pull the laboratory service in-house was for a couple reasons. The first reason, obviously, being it's more convenience for the patient, and that's very important these days. These days, people have the opportunity to go to different centers, see different doctors. So you need to give them an a la carte, but you need to give them the best possible service. So this gave us the ability, to be more convenient for the patients. The second thing, and I can't stress how important this is, but it's probably the most important factor, is having the ability to control the operations. And when I'm describing controlling operations, I'm not talking about us working with the lab director or us controlling the lab technician. What I'm discussing is the ability to be able to obtain the results in a timely fashion. Usually, when you work with outside laboratory, you're lucky if you get the results back within a week. But for the addiction centers or for psych consultations, sometimes you need those results immediately, within that timeline. Because if the patient wants a script, you need to know if they're taking other medications or if they're taking the medications that they're being prescribed. So when we started the clinical laboratory, it gave us the ability to be able to run the tests immediately if we needed those results. Okay, so now I'm going to go and start discussing about the beautiful experiences we had on creating the on-site clinical laboratory. Okay, as a practice or as a hospital or as a addiction center, you need to ask yourself, the one big question. What is the practice terminal? Once you determine that, then you're smooth sailing. But let me break it down for you and tell you what we determined was our terminal starting the laboratory. There's 4 questions that we end up finding out that is very important. First one is, how much space do you actually need? The second one is, how do you find a qualified lab director? Third one is, how do you properly bill and collect for laboratory services? Fourth one is, how do you find qualified personnel to run your laboratory? Okay, so let's go in depth and kind of break down those questions I brought up. The first one, how much space do we need? Okay, so on slide, here on slide 44, I pretty much talk about the centralization process, but I want you to see the CLC 720 from Carolina Liquids Chemistries. This is the analyzer we currently use in our practice, in my laboratory, and then also for a consultant firm as well. The dimensions for the CLC 720, 46, 27, 25 inches. So as you can tell, you do need a dedicated space for your laboratory, and that's obviously to obtain the hypoplastic CLIA. But you don't need that. You don't need a whole room, or you don't need a large space. So a good thing to think about is, the dimensions of 46, 27, and 25. Okay. That being said, questions 2, 3, and 4. How do you find a qualified lab director? When I say qualified lab director, I'm meaning a medical director who has experience in laboratories, or so the third one is, how do you properly bill and collect the laboratory services? And then fourth one, like I said, how do you find qualified personnel to run the laboratory? That could be like a lab technician. Now, those 3 questions, the reason why I didn't break them down, those 3 questions, those are items that could be centralized by using outside services, outside consultant groups or firms who specialize and who specialize in laboratories, and that's what they do. I can't emphasize and tell you how important it is that, as a practitioner or as even a addiction center, to be able to outsource those components. It's actually in our nature, and with doctors especially, and hospitals too, is that they feel that they can do everything themselves, that we can do the service. We don't need to use another service. I found from my experience in developing different medical models is that outsourcing and using firms are adequate. And in this one, I would say it's very, very important because you might not choose the right equipment. You might be spending too much on supplies and reagents and etc. Or you might have picked the wrong device. So now the time for the test is taking 5 to 6 hours rather than where you could take an hour. So staffing is going to go up. So there's a lot of value, like I said, in outsourcing items, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So I want to. This is 45. On slide 45, kind of demonstrates what a typical in-house lab setup would be. Kind of self-explanatory. The pathologist here, as you can tell, that's your lab director, and that's the one that's valuable. It's hard to obtain, so a consultant service can help you to obtain a pathologist or a lab director. The one very, very important aspect and item that I want to discuss about having a successful lab is also choosing the right equipment, choosing the right chemistry analyzer. It's extremely important. The reason why I say that is 2 questions I learned from trials and error is that the questions you get to ask yourself is, how many samples are you anticipating on running? 1. The second one is what type of assays are you looking to run? And I'll review those 2 and tell you why it's kind of important for that. The reason why that we went with the CL720 analyzer, as you can tell in the slide that I'm showing, the reason was for it's 2 things. At the time, we were running probably about 200, 300 samples a month. Obviously, we increased since then, but at 200, 300 samples, you're in that middle area where if you buy the wrong equipment, if you buy too small of a analyzer, you could run 30 tests and it could take you 4 hours, rather than the device we have, the CLC720. They could run up to 550 tests per hour. That's extremely valuable for us. And as you can tell, 550, that's not going to help us on a 200 to 300 because we're still performing a test either weekly or sometimes if we done that. So obviously that's extremely important, something to look for. And the second thing is that you need to always look for, but CLC was very good, is that the amount of assays they can run. So for the CLC720, they could do up to 90 different assays. And those assays range from the chemistry assays to drug monitoring assays. They even also go as far as forensic assays as well, too. That's something that we really don't, as a practice, kind of use and determine, but that's always something good to know, that you have a lot of different tests that you can run from your analyzer. The third that was extremely important is that the required space needed was a lot smaller using a CLC720 than it would be if we obtained another analyzer that ran the same, that ran 550 but was a lot larger. Space for us is very important, and as you guys being in practice, you know that you got to utilize every space possible. The fourth thing was something I determined once we started performing the confirmations and us started going into the nitty-gritty of the lab's services, was the CLC. They have the best software design that I could see so far. when I say that is, usually when you have your lab services, you have to buy what we call an LIS system. And if you guys have used an LIS system, you know how expensive they are. I mean, some range, just to get the web portal, just to start a web portal, you probably look at about $15,000. Then, if you wanted a complete LIS system, you're probably looking $100,000, $125,000. With this system, they have a built-in software design that was so easy for us to use that our lab director or a medical technician can just hit a button when it's done and will pull up the screen for us and tell us, it'll tell us the how, the value and the run of how much, is in their system. Important. And again, that's kind of our experience that we have with, starting a clinical laboratory. And I'm glad, again, Dr. Sicuro brought up what happened yesterday, because those kind of scenarios, you have to have that ability of being able to run that test that moment. And that, gives us a little feather in cap other centers, other offices, they don't have. That pretty much wraps up our slide, and I guess we could turn it over to some Q&As.
Thank you for the informative presentation. Before we get started on the question and answer session, I'd like to remind our audience how to submit questions. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. And our first question could be for Dr. Sicuro or Carlos. What made you choose Carolina Liquid Chemistry for your supplier?
Yeah, probably, Carlos may answer this, is a little bit more in the technicality than me.
Okay, the reason why we decided to use Carolina Liquid Chemistries was that their service, so far, what I see, their customer service is by far the best. Some of these large manufacturers, once you buy the equipment, and they set it up, they're gone. You'll never see them again. With Carolina Liquids, they gave us the ability where, if we call them and we're having a technical issue, they send someone out immediately. But the other thing is about the assays and the reagents that they produce and the manufacture and sell. There's such a wide range of assays that we can have. And again, we don't just do drug monitoring. We also do like CVDs. We also do cardiovascular, diabetes, some hormone testing. They offer a wide array of assays that other manufacturers don't.
Okay. What are some pitfalls for starting your own laboratory? This is actually a two-parter. What are some pitfalls for starting your own laboratory, and why did that not deter you from doing so? This could be for Dr. Sicuro or Carlos.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know Dr. is laughing right now. This happened in default. Dr. Sicuro wanted to stay away from having another service as badly as a plague. And because of certain events that happened, and obviously, we only have an hour to discuss, but if certain events that happened, we had to pull the service in-house. But when I tell you, and Dr. Sicuro would admit this now, that was the best thing we've ever done. It took a lot of work, and it took thousands of hours of myself to learn the process, to become an expert, to learn the regulations, because one of the pitfalls is people don't understand the regulations involving having a clinical laboratory. Like, for example, how do you obtain a high complexity CLIA? The second thing is understanding the technology enough where you're running a certain amount of volume and you don't need to run a test every day. So, using using a great device like the CLC720, I can have my technologist one day a week, and then I'm saving so much on expenses. So money is a problem too, as everyone knows, because especially right now that the reimbursements are getting cut every year, you have to find different ways of saving cost. So there's so many other variables. And the third one, let me bring this up, and right when I have it, is that the constant changing of regulatory the climate. Every month, every year, something new is being added, either from CMS or private insurance, that someone has to stay on top just to be in compliance. So those are some of the pitfalls that I can, a few, but some of the pitfalls describing starting your own lab. But again, there's help out there. You can feel free always to call me if you have questions. But there's consultant services who can do all this for you and put it like in a little bow and tie it up for you, so you could do what you guys do best and patients.
Okay. Next one is, why did you choose an in-house lab over instant drug test cups? And that could be for either.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a very good question. I guess what it is this: you can probably drug test your patients if you're suspicious, or if you're not suspicious, and get a general idea. You can get a little kit, urine kit, and the problem with that is this. Let me give you an example. So I have a patient that is already taking, Ritalin or Adderall or one of the psychostimulants, very common in the psych practice, as an augmentation therapy. Well, it's good to know they don't sell it, so it's good to know to have a test to be done. But sometimes people are smart enough, they come in for a visit, they may take it, take 1 pill, 2 pills, so it shows up positive. So when we do the testing, also we do the confirmation, we have the capability of elucidating, the amount. So the other day, my nurse practitioner came in and she said, look at this lab test. We have a over 50,000 level of a when we are given only 20 milligrams of Adderall. It's obvious this individual is shopping around, is getting from someplace else. So, the question is always, we know there may be a problem. A lot of us in clinical practice, we have the sense that that is, but at that point, you have to be able to say, if you if you find that somebody has a high cholesterol level, what are you going to do? We're going to give them a diet. That's perfect. You want to also show what kind of cholesterol you have. So, the detail of the test, aids you in clinical decisions, and so that's really been the driver.
And let me add to that what Dr. Gould was mentioning. There's two other things that I noticed. One being that the cups are really unreliable. The analyzers is 90 to 99% accurate in describing what type of medication they're on. So in the cups they were saying it's low as 30%. That's very important. The second thing that a lot of people don't see, but I definitely see it on the bottom line, is those cups are expensive. They're valuable, don't get me wrong, but those cups, if they cost $6, sometimes even $10, those kits, and you try to reimburse the cup with insurance companies, a lot of companies are starting to deny them because they're seeing it, as part of the practice. So you do have to look at the bottom line as well. But going more clinical, it's obviously just that it's not as accurate. So hopefully that.
Okay. Well, I want to give people a chance to ask more questions. I believe looks like some people are typing. So let's just give people a moment here and see if we can field some more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Give us a brief pause here.
Sure.
Give them a few more seconds. Again, looks like typing going on. Okay, so I think we will wrap up. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Carolina Liquid Chemistries, for making today's educational webcast possible. We'll follow up with you on questions we did not get to answer today in the next couple of days. Today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through October 29, 2015. You'll receive an email from LabRoots alerting you when this webcast will be available for replay. We invite you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.